because of you, I noticed things about makers, and because I have been really interested in economic development and sort of the soft path to sustainable economy rather than crashing and burning when one economic thing is over, such as fossil fuel, and how do you make that transition? So I've been really interested in that. And I don't know when I was first captivated by the maker concept. A couple of years ago, I think, maybe, Doug, when you had a luncheon or something. Is that right? Yeah. And Nikki, for sure.
Yeah, right.
And so I was paying attention, and I get a lot of email, and one of the emails I got was from MAC, which is Manufacturer Alliance Coalition, and they said, jump on board with mayors of the United States of America and support the makers. And I said, yeah, that's us. So that's what I did. It was as simple as that. I bet you thought it was something I had done. So I signed up for that, and then I get the next email, and I read, and everything, and I get another email, and it is the White House invitation to go back to the first White House Makerfaire. And so I, of course, signed up for that. And it turned out there were about 90 mayors in the entire United States who thought this was really a cool idea, and they're big cities and little cities. It was a big mixture. And 20 of us wound up being there in DC for this one-day event. 2 of us from California. Although there were many in California, just the 2 of us were able to make that trip. Some mayors from, some cities have deputy mayors. One from Philadelphia, for instance, and then somebody from New York City wasn't deputy mayor, I've forgotten their title, but they got to represent the mayor. But mostly it was just the mayor. And so I was very excited. So I'll tell you about the exciting part, about why I was excited and my rationale for spending all my money to go back there for one day. And then I'll tell you the substance. So for years and years and years, after I went to the Obama inauguration with a purple ticket, if you guys remember what happened to the purple ticket holders to go to the inauguration, I wanted to have dinner at the White House. Now, I just thought that I was going to be able to work that out. But the more I saw what was happening at the dinners at the White House, I decided I really wasn't interested anymore. And so then when this opportunity came up, I thought, this is it. This is my opportunity, White House and so forth. And so it was kind of a fulfillment of a little goal that I had. We came in through the West Wing, which was awesome. And we had to have all kinds of clearance several days before, and then they came in and cleared us again. And we met in the Roosevelt Room. And how many of you watched West Wing? So it's that small conference room. And very subtle, very tasteful, and very serious. And all the president's top advisors were in there. It wasn't the B team, this was the A team. My favorite, and I probably shouldn't say that, but my favorite was the science advisor who knows California very well and actually knows Benicia, used to fish here. So we had some nice conversations, Hodgins. And really smart people. And so we had sat around this big conference table and with the staff, and the staff was talking about the president's initiative and what they're doing and some details, and then wanted to hear from us. And a couple of mayors spoke up. I was the second one to speak up, and I spoke up for Benicia, and I explained why we were really special and all of that. And I'll tell you what I said. I said, that we have a DNA of manufacturing in this city. We were the first industrial facility in California in 1847. And we've done really well by maintaining that manufacturing. And I've always believed in manufacturing. And we need to keep that alive. And like we have a lot of endangered species in California, I don't want to see manufacturing as an endangered species. And then I said, but coupled with that, we have an equally long history of the creative arts in many forms. And I think it's always been that kind of interesting mix of the creative side of Benicia and the manufacturing side, and they often meet at an intersection. And then in addition to that, we're a close community. We're sort of family, and a lot of communities can't claim that. So it's, in some ways, it's easier for us to make some changes and to transition. And I said a few other things. And so I wanted to get us on the map. It was really important for me to be part of that list of cities who were eager to embrace this concept of makers and whatever programs will be generated from that and investment opportunities. But more importantly, people like you and small startups and investors who understand that this is a community that has a welcome mat out for innovation, for creativity, but grounded in solid manufacturing capacity and thinking and science and knowledge. So that was my thinking when I got there. We then could wander around in the White House. It was shut off that day, so there weren't any visitors. And so I wandered around and I could even take pictures, which I was amazed. And then we were shepherded into the East Room. And that's the room that if you see the concerts and some of the speeches and everything, it's that room. And we thought because the president was coming momentarily, and about 57 minutes later, the president came. And what he had been doing, it was so hot and muggy that for some reason the Secret Service decided that it wasn't healthy for him to be out looking at the projects with a bunch of other people like us. So they had us waiting in the East Room while he looked at the projects. And I will tell you, how many of you know Esri? Okay, so if you do Esri, go to their story, the Makersfaire, and they have a digital map and it has little flags on it, and just click on those and you will see all the projects that were from all over the country, and of course quite a few from California. So I'm just going to tell you about 3 because I didn't get to see all of them either. I think there are about over 60. One was possibly my favorite, was a little robot. It's an aquatic robot, and it can be launched into the ocean or rivers. And there are 2 guys from Berkeley that came up with this idea. And they've actually started a firm, so they now have a firm going. They didn't have the firm when they came up with it. And I asked them, because I am water, right? So I asked them, I said, well, how fast does it go? Can it keep up with a salmon? And this guy standing next to me thought I was a dingbat. And, why are you asking that? And so these Californian guys are looking at me, and I said, because it's really hard to figure out why the salmon get lost in the delta. And if you could follow a salmon around, maybe you could start beginning to understand what the barriers are and so forth. And right now, they all have to be tagged. The salmon have to be tagged, and then you have to manage that, and it's very labor intensive, and people take mortgages on their homes in order to pay for their work because the state's so slow in paying. That's a true story. And so their eyes lit up, and they thought, wow, yeah, I think, it can keep up with a salmon, so who knows. Then another cool project is a tennis shoe that as you're walking it charges your iPhone. It comes in designer colors. And then, of course, the one that really got all the news, and it's a Californian one also, is the giraffe. And there's this big robot giraffe that was built. Took him a year, I believe, to build. And it does everything. It talks, it moves, you can ride it. And so the idea is that it's kind of interactive. You can ask the giraffe, what do you eat? And so you could actually learn about what giraffes do and things like that. And it gets to one of the things that Aaron and Nikki have talked a lot about, is that third leg of that stool, which is education. And actually, what I came away from at the Makersfaire there was the idea that a lot of students are bored in school. And if they could do more hands-on things, it starts to make sense of why they need to know physics and math and so forth and so on. And I sort of relate to that because one of my first jobs out of college was a science teacher at the Lawrence Hall of Science, and I was the hands-on teacher. And I would go into schools in Berkeley and Lafayette and Walnut Creek and Concord and have a class for 2 weeks, and I would do nothing but hands-on science. And that teacher didn't dare come back and teach out of a book. And while I was doing that for 2 weeks, the teacher was at the Lawrence Hall of Science learning how to do hands-on. And I have no idea why that isn't a main program in education today. And I'm sorry, I don't think I want to tell you what year that was, a long time ago. So that was real exciting to me, and that was to me, that's one of the big things that I thought the president's vision was on the Makersfaire. He did come in and he spoke to us, and you can go online and see what he said. And I know he was reading from his teletype, but he also understands the topic, because a couple of times it was like the teletype stopped working or something, and he just kept going. I mean, he knows this stuff. He understands the value of what this means to our economy, and he sees the opportunities, and so he really wants to put the resources there. So a couple of little concerns I've had. I think that there has been a lot of talk about the innovative economy, and that the old is out, you know, everything is innovative, and I was feeling uncomfortable with that because of my strong connection to manufacturing, which I've had as long as I can think about thinking. And just this weekend, I was reading the New Yorker, and there's a great article in the current New Yorker about the unnecessary polemic between the old ways of doing things and innovation. And it's actually some of the old operations, some of the old manufacturers who actually sustain the innovation. The innovators can often burn out or fizzle, and for a variety of reasons, and this article goes on to describe it. But then it shows how the old economy embraces that innovation, incorporates it, and grows. And if you don't, you definitely won't do well. So it's a really, really interesting article. And I think that is important to us in Benicia. I don't think we want to get so carried away that all the innovation is good and the old stuff is, you know, old stuff, and we don't need to relate to it. And Doug probably is the walking poster person for that understanding. And so I think it's really important that we grasp the importance of maintaining our network, or establishing a network with the old manufacturers, if you will, or the old economy, because I think there's a lot more to it than a lot of people give it credit for. So in addition to my taking advantage of that, I also got the New York Times to send me as a guest to Tom Friedman's forum in San Francisco. I'll tell you my secret about how I did that later, if you ask me. So here's the program. And how many of you read Tom Friedman? So Tom Friedman's a columnist with the New York Times, and he's a very progressive, forward-thinking guy. His wife is very, very active in an international environmental organization for wildlife. I can't remember the title. I think it's wildlife conservation. In any case, they're a well-rounded couple, and he's really smart with economics, and he's been hammering away at this idea that we have to invest in our education, we have to invest in our infrastructure. Why are we giving up to other countries? We have everything that we need to be successful and to stay competitive. However, Tom Friedman also seems to embrace innovation in a rather overly exuberant way, to the exclusion of old manufacturing. He says, yeah, there's a little place for it, but it'll never roar back the way it was. It'll never be a significant part of our economy. And I really had an opportunity to have a wonderful day at one of the brightest forums I've ever been to, and I go to a lot. No PowerPoints. I thought that was really interesting. And each of the panelists and speaker was captivating. They knew their stuff, didn't always agree, of course. Lots of people from around the world were there, a lot of educators, big time. And so I brought this, and the topics ran from education. Are we going to have face-to-face education. Classroom education is going to morph into online education. There's quite a bit of discussion about that. And one of the answers was there's lots of room for online learning, but face-to-face and interaction among people and with a teacher or professor is essential. And I was pleased to hear that. Then they had about what disruptors are, and so here's a book on disruptors. And I'm trying to figure out how I can share this with everybody. They can take a look at, we'll figure out something. And so then they had some examples of that. But as I said, you can kind of get carried away with some of these ideas. A vacuum-based egg separator. You know, I've been separating eggs for many, many years, just fine, thank you very much. And a vacuum-based egg separator, the guy's making tons of money, he, you know, can live in San Francisco. But what is that teaching us? Well, it's teaching us something about vacuums. It's teaching us that there are different applications of vacuums, and it does teach us that maybe we have a better way of manufacturing something because we understand the functions of vacuum. So it's really cool to be, you know, to be stimulated and to be challenged like that, and then think of other applications. That to me is what the disruptors, the next disruptors mean. And then I'm going to finish up with this, and then finish up with what I wanted to get across in here. So, and they, you know, they talked about the new forces shaping our lives, our work, and our economies, and how's my kid going to get a job? I have a 38-year-old PhD daughter who can't get a job. PhD is in geography with an emphasis on satellite imagery. And the Department of Defense would love to hire her, and the oil companies would love to hire her. And she doesn't want to do those two things, and the research is not funded for the basic research. And so the jobs are in Europe or in Asia. And so that's her choice. She can stay here and be a researcher at Sonoma State for slightly above minimum wage, or she can go to Europe. That's scary. And I think that we do need to invest in our education. So good for Benicia, supports education, you know, more is better. Now, here's our homework assignment. So, as I said, I was kind of just signed up. I said, you know, and I had to check all these boxes. What do you do in your city? And so I just checked all these boxes. And so there I was being asked to go to the White House. Okay, so what they want to know is, and Aaron and I have already talked about this, and so he's going to be the point person, because we need to have a point person, and it shouldn't be me, the mayor. And what we need to do is we need to get ourselves up on the website to show what we're doing. So we're there in name only. So the first thing is we need to have the best practices. So the homework assignment is, and maybe we can send this out and you guys can do this online, is what are the best practices for makers? What have you learned, you know, kind of the lessons learned, and what do you think the best practices are? And they're looking for ideas, they're looking for leadership. What have you benefited from leadership in the last 2 years? Is that about the right time frame? And then so what can others learn from what we've been doing? Because obviously not everybody is doing this, and so what's working for Benicia, we'll have to, I'll help describe who we are, you know, what Benicia is, because that's really easy. That all of that stuff is up on the city's website. And then people who are looking in other parts of the country for examples and saying, well, you know, we're not Philadelphia, but ooh, well, we're about that size in Benicia, and yeah, we have kind of a big time industrial base, so maybe we can learn something from them. The second is maker liaison, so we've already designated Aaron. The third is a maker roundtable. I always considered the first one you guys had. And so we should think about that. And I'm pretty sure, I don't want to ever promise anything about city without clearing it, but I'm pretty sure we could get some assistance with city staff to maybe have it at the Doña Benicia room and literally have a table set up where we could, they're not round, but square tables, and we could have that as a summit kind of thing. So we should set a date for that when we want to do that, and how soon, and then we can send that back to them. A Makerfaire. Oh, I forgot to tell you my favorite thing about the president. So he comes into the East Room, and he looks just like he does on television. And he's standing at the podium, and I'm like 3 rows away, and I'm thinking, this is so cool, 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 cool. And he says, "What have you guys done to my house?" And because all these exhibits were throughout the White House. And we thought that was pretty funny. And then he says, "And what is this E on the end of fair?" And he says, "Well, I got to talk to my staff." E, he says, "What do we have to dress up? Is this like a Renaissance thing, you know?" And then he says, "This is America. We don't put E's on the end of fair." He had the audience by that time. Anyway, so Makerfaire, and we've talked about that, where we think maybe merging the Clean Tech Expo with the Makerfaire and have that in the spring. So if we're going to do that, we need to start planning. We need to have a planning group, and we need to start meeting on a regular basis, because it takes a lot of work, as Constance would be happy to tell you. So that's something that I can't lead that, just because it won't get done, and I'm spread too thin. Then Makerspace. So a lot of communities have provided Makerspace, and that was inspiring. And if you go to the web page with the White House Makersfaire, you'll see those communities that have done that. They actually list them, and they're listed here too. I think, yeah, it's in this booklet. So what can we do? And I believe we've gotten the city's attention. I believe they're being more responsive now to the request. And I did get clarification on the clock tower, and there are severe limitations in terms of the tenant improvements and all of that. But it turns out that they are thinking about other places now. So let's stay on top of that. And that would be my goal, I feel that that's probably the thing that I need to put the elbow to the plow and really make happen. So I will be continuing to work on that. So that's mine. Maker Manual, and let me read what this is. It says, issue a Maker Manual to explain the importance of the Maker movement in your community and to identify resources and incentives at local, regional, state, and national levels that can support makers and small businesses seeking to grow their technology and manufacturing innovations. So like the presentation you made to City Council was really excellent, and if we could package that, and I can take it around because I, get around, and then other people too. We need to have a place that people go to on the web, but we also need something that's a hard copy that we can distribute. So, yeah, but there, as I said, the program is to get attention onto the makers, and so there would be grants, but this is not a grant program. But there is the potential of economic investment. The president has an economic council, whatever they call that, and so they can direct funds and everything. But this does not qualify us. It just gets more presence on the fact that we are part of the White House Makersfaire. And you'll see when you go online, because all of this is online, when you see what the other cities have done and they were being called out, the fact that I had just signed up and checked a few boxes off, I wasn't able to do any of this, and so we didn't get listed. But that's okay, because I was kind of late in the game anyway, and I think they had this all prearranged. Because, as I was saying, that some of the communities were, Philadelphia is a really good example, and there are a lot of East Coast representation. It's just the nature of the beast that you're close to Washington, D.C., so you get plugged in faster than we do out here on the West Coast. And so we'll make up, get a presence. The 7th one is make a strategy for education, training, and workforce development. So I've heard, and I don't come to all of these, but I've heard conversation about the strategy, but do we actually have a written strategy? That's a perfect way to work with a school district And I think they have some wonderful opportunities. They're very interested in this. I mean, they really get this. So we should pursue that. So anyone who has a particular interest in coordinating with a school district, that would, if you know, 3 of us can do a lot. 8 is Maker Business Development, and that says upgrade your economic and business development programs, incentives and services to provide support to manufacturing entrepreneurs and small businesses. That be me, because we do have an economic strategy, development strategy. And I bet I can go through there and pick out of, I can't remember, I think it's 113 or 114 actions. And so I will work with the city manager and the Mario Giuliani, who's our economic development manager. And then we'll come back and share it with you, because if you want to refine it, you need to know what some of the constraints are about doing that. And if you can live with it, probably that would make more sense, but I want your input, your thoughts on that. And that's awesome, because that means it signals to the world and to investors that this is what we see as part of our economic development. So it needs to be integrated into our overall scheme. And when we developed the strategies, Makers was maybe a thought over here, but it wasn't up in front of us. And I would venture to say that we don't have a collective understanding and consensus about what this program is about and the value of it. Even though there have been really good presentations, it takes a while for that to take hold. So that's our challenge. But I don't think it's an overwhelming challenge at all. And I know the city manager really gets it. So we have a lot of support there, and that's important. He's an important person. Number 9 is maker support in struggling neighborhoods. The last one is make it even better. Your community may have even more innovative strategies for promoting the maker movement. Make that part of your challenge pledge and share the strategy with others. Who would like to volunteer what you think is really unique for Benicia? I would go back to the arts, and when I say that, it's the fine arts, the performing arts, and it's an amazing collection of talent in this community that often doesn't get to showcase it because there's no place for them, which is crazy. So there's that part. And as I said, the main thing is to go online. I can give you, I think the website, if you don't know it already. I always hate saying Google, but the easiest thing is to Google the White House Makersfaire, right? And that has all these kinds of linkages to various things in the back. So like this book has linkages, but if you go online, then you can link to other things. And it's really fun to do. You know, that we're gonna achieve a lot by using the rules that make sense for us, using the tools that are available, and then making it up when we need to, and inventing when we need to, and then coming together. So thank you very much.